Welcome to Tiff Talks podcast. This is your host, Tiffany Marie Davis. I am so excited. I have a treat for you all. You guys have heard me speak about Enneagram tests and numbers and all of that mumbo jumbo that I definitely cannot break down because I am still a student in the art of Enneagram. I have the most amazing woman here with me today, Miss Tracy O'Malley. She is a lifelong leadership junkie that has always been obsessed with transformation. A decade ago, although having the ability to be successful, rock bottom came calling with deaths, divorce, recession, and unhealthy coping mechanisms. It was then Tracy brought her life to ground zero and began filling the toolbox with more effective tools. She walked away from a successful career that sucked the life out of her and into a new one in leadership and team building, emotional intelligence, sales and network marketing, and went from $0 to $1 million in income in just 2 years. She built a very diverse and dynamic organization of over 100,000 people strong and continues to lead, coach organizations, companies, and individuals in leadership and communication using the integrating the framework of the Enneagram, in which she is an expert. And I repeat, she is an expert. And she's also a thought leader in that area. When people feel seen, heard, and understood, anything is possible. I am so excited. Welcome to the show, Tracy.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to chit chat with you. I like your fire. I can feel it.
I love it. Yeah, I'm going to definitely talk to you about some stuff. I'm excited to learn more about me, learn more about the people in my life. So I want to hear your back end story because one of my missions, one of them, I have lots of missions. I'm crazy like that. But one of my missions is I really want to show people that we just didn't wake up in entrepreneurship and our life just doesn't look magical. And, you know, we have all of like the great things on social media, but I really want people to know your back end story. And, you know, just hearing your bio alone, I want you to share with everyone where you started and how you got here today.
Oh my goodness. Like I could be the mama of most of your audience. My children are in their 20s, they're 23 and 24. And I've been divorced for 14 years, single mom, sole provider, emotionally, physically, spiritually, and financially, all that time. I grew up back in Chi-Town, Chicago. So I'm a feisty Chicago Irish girl and born in, I'm almost 50. Like I'll be 50 next year. It's crazy to even
For
say
the
that.
record, I would never have guessed. When you guys see this on the unedited version, she's an absolute beautiful woman.
Thank you. You know what? Growing up back east and in that generation, I grew up in the household, I'm a first generation personal developer. So some of you listening have maybe experienced parents that have kind of tackled this stuff. I'm kind of going rogue with personal development, quite honestly, because how I grew up was like, what happens in our house stays in our house. Do as I say, not as I do. Suck it up, shut up. You're better seen than heard is basically the culture and the generation that I grew up with. And I took that very literally. But I always had this fire in me. I've always been very intuitive. I grew up in an alcoholic home. I had an emotionally abandoning, kind of neglectful mom. She's a beautiful soul, but she just could not deal. And so as the oldest child, I, at the age of 4, started to be very adult-like and making decisions and beliefs being born as a 4-year-old really affected my life the next 30 something years. I've always been feisty and fiery. Put a goal in front of me and I'll crush it. A lot of it was to prove my worth, quite honestly. My dad wanted boys. And the day that I was born, this is back when men weren't in the delivery room. This is how old I am. And there were no gender reveal parties or any shit like that. It was literally, you got what you got the day the kid was born and good luck. And dad's out in the waiting room smoking cigarettes is kind of the scene, right?
I love that though, for the record. I feel like we don't get very many surprises in life and we get to go back to that and run out and tell the family what the baby is. How cool is that though? I just had to
Totally. I love the simple things like that. But here's the most impactful story that's ever been told about me. And I heard it when I was 4 years old as well. So the day that I'm born, after 30 something hours of labor, my 20-year-old mother gives birth to me. The doctor comes out to tell my 24-year-old father, congratulations, Mr. O'Malley, you have a daughter. And my dad, as unfiltered, Archie Bunker type kind of personality, like 100% Irish, says, you know what, you can keep her. I don't want her. And if you knew my dad, you know he's kidding. Like, he is hilarious and a jokester. The Irish have embellishing, big, grandioso stories, and this is one of them. And although it's hilarious and my logical mind knows this, when you imagine a 4-year-old hearing that story, what would a 4-year-old believe about that story?
Right.
The belief that I came up with that dictated every move I made the next 36 years would be that I need to be as close to perfect as possible in order to be worthy of love, approval, acceptance, and attention. Because I was never going to grow a penis, y'all. not not this time. And
Not
and
this life.
so no, not in this lifetime. Not for me. If that's your choice, go for it. But it's
Right.
And so I pretty much operated in the belief of, okay, what would my dad want from me?
Mhm.
And, it dictated how I showed up in relationships. It's dictated how I judged women. It dictated how close I would let people get to my heart. And for the next 30 something years, I was pretty destructive, but quiet about it. Like, you didn't know I was self-destructing, because I'll be damned if you let me see me go down, right? I'm an Enneagram 8. So the last thing you're going to see is vulnerability coming out of me. I'd rather die. And so I was basically imploding and blowing shit up, and then, leaving the wreckage behind. And I got married super young, hightailed it out of Chicago, got married at 21, had back-to-back Irish twins like a good Irish girl does. By the time I'm 24, I have 2 kids under the age of 2, and loved it. And it was great. And started a business with my now ex-husband, you know, had the cute little home, the 2 golden retrievers, the 2 kids. Life is good. We got a mortgage. I'm awesome. Until I wasn't. You can't outrun some of this stuff. And if you don't repair it, you repeat it. And I really believed with my whole heart that I could go set up shop somewhere else and leave all of the unhealthy stuff behind me. But it does catch up to you if you don't work on it and address it, and not just address it, but address it with love. It's just a matter of time before it takes down everything you've ever wanted for your life. And, it was 12 years ago when the recession hit. I was going through a divorce at the time. My kids were 9 and 10. It was a shit show. And at the same time, my dad gets diagnosed with cancer. 12 days later, he dies. So all of it was happening at once. I was back into corporate America in a male dominated industry, which I couldn't stand, even though I was awesome at it. My coping mechanisms all came to the surface.
Yeah.
Food addiction. I've been tag teamed by a couple eating disorders most of my life. My alcohol consumption, like a good Irish girl. I was born to drink and fight, and boy, was I good at both. Um, I was a power tripping, angry woman. I was an emasculator. I was codependent. You name the coping mechanism, and I pretty much had it. And I was really great at all of them. And, it was when my dad died, I was like, I had just turned 40. I was like, you know what? Like, life is too short, and I got a lot of life to live. And my kids were now becoming teenagers, and I started to see them repeat some of my not so pretty parts. And I knew that, just like our teams that you're leading, our kids that we're leading, anybody that we lead, they will do what we do, not what we say to do.
Mm.
And if I wanted something different for them, then I had to show up a little bit differently in my very best. And so that's when I decided to walk away from my only income.
Mm.
I was not receiving child support. I decided to wipe out my entire social network and check myself in to get help with all these coping mechanisms, every single one. I didn't leave any of them hidden in my back pocket. I was like, I know myself, and I will manipulate the shit out of this.
Mm.
So I walked into rehab and I said, this is all my shit. This is all of it. I'm not hiding anything. And I'm 40 at this point. So, those of you listening, I'm on like Tracy 6.0 at this point. So
Yeah.
it's never too late.
Yeah.
But it was in rehab. My therapist that I still see to this day, she's a type 8 on the Enneagram as well. And she's a feisty lady from Texas.
Mm.
She basically called me on my bullshit bullshit. And she's probably one of the first people I've ever allowed to.
Mm.
And, she wanted me to take the Enneagram test. And I was like, fuck that. I don't want to do that. Are you kidding me? I don't need another label. I clearly just laid 100 of them on the table here for
Right.
you. And in true Enneagram 8 feisty spirit, she says, well, your best thinking has gotten you here. So, maybe you want to consider something different. I'm like, well, touche.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, right. So it was then that I took the Enneagram test. She originally thought I might have been a 3, but as we dig deeper, which is really important to not just rely on these online assessments, because as we dug deeper, although I appear very 3-like put a goal in front of me and I'll crush it, I'm not motivated by what motivates a 3. I'm motivated 100% by what motivates an 8. And that's where this journey began. And it was in rehab that, it's one of those things, Tiff, like when you look in the mirror, do we always look at the beautiful parts about us? Almost never.
No.
Our eyes beeline to the parts we don't love, that we want to improve, that are a thorn in our side. And of course, when looking at the Enneagram 8, I looked at those qualities. I was like, oh shit, I'm an asshole. I'm basically the biggest asshole on the Enneagram. And there was something in the moment, like I was like, I'm seeing all these behaviors, like check, check, check. Yep, I'm an ass. Yep, I'm domineering. Yep, I can be a bully. Yep, I can be aggressive. Um, but there was this moment that I was like, but where there's darkness, there must be light. And it was definitely a divine moment that my eyes started to gaze towards all the beautiful, beautiful parts of the 8. World-class leader, world changer, truth seeker, justice finder, the people that make big, big moves that change the world. I was like, fuck yes, I know that is me. I've been there before. I know I've got it in me. But, the thing I say about the Enneagram and each type, and this is really important for you and anybody listening that loves the Enneagram, like I didn't change who I want. I'm still a fireball, clearly.
Yeah.
I don't use all my old coping mechanisms. I've been sober 8.5 years, like by the grace of God, they retired that jersey. I'm good. But, my intensity is my superpower today. That's like the core Enneagram 8 kind of energy, is intense. And it's always my superpower when, and only when, it comes from compassion, love, service, empathy, grace, right?
Mhm.
But that same intensity, as in the story I told before, that same intensity becomes a wrecking ball
Yeah.
when it comes from fear, insecurity, unworthiness, shame, guilt, and ego. So the beautiful part of this is like, what I loved about the Enneagram early on is like, I'm not changing who the hell I am. However, I don't have to use it as a weapon. I don't have to use it as a wall.
Mm.
And all I have to alter is the come from that my whole essence is coming from. And the only way we can lean into our superpowers, the only way, is through love, compassion, empathy, grace, and service.
Mm.
So in order to do that, I had to give myself that same courtesy. And that meant the shame and guilt had to be worked on extensively. And that's the beauty of all of this. You can't give what you don't have. So in order to be able to be that world-class, big money making move person, I had to give myself exactly what I was going to attempt to give other people. And that's where all this started almost a decade ago.
Well, I have chills up and down my toes. I didn't even know that was possible. I mean, from my head to my toes, I have chills. I'm sure that so many people can relate. You're an absolute perfect guest for what we are about. And I love your story. I love that, like you said, it's never too late to do the work. There's so many nuggets in that. If you don't repair it, you'll repeat it. It's never too late. Where there's darkness, there must be light. And that's where you get to lean in. And prior to Tracy coming on, we caught up a little bit, and I really wanted to let you guys know that we all have a story, and you get to own it in that process. And like she had mentioned, it's never too late to really start doing the work. At 40 years old, she's decided to not only change the narrative of her life, but she jumped off the cycle. She jumped off the cycle of all that she had known. She could have been, down that path and stayed there and all she knew and stayed in that masculine domineering, or dominating space. But you really were able to tap into your feminine energy, is what I hear you say. And that is very challenging, especially when you're a go-getter and when you're in a space of corporate, because that is, a very masculine space. You're constantly competing. I mean, I'm a corporate dropout and I'm proud of it.
Well, in the
Yeah.
corporate space I was in the male dominated car industry on top of it.
Oh,
Right. So it's like the ratio was like 1,000 to 1 men to women. So I had to like my tough ass, hard as nails exterior with, I'm not too hard to look at, really
yeah.
definitely helped the situation, but it also fed the unhealthy parts of the dark side.
Yeah. And what I love about your entire story is what I hear you say is because you discovered the Enneagram,
Mhm.
you really, that's when the work began, when you understood how you functioned, how
Mhm.
you operated, and then also how you were able to tap into that feminine space. And because when you get there, you're magical, is
It's
what
so
it sounds
funny.
like.
It's so funny because like most of you that are just maybe meeting me, I mean, I was a little intense on the front end of this, but if you met me, I'm very gentle,
Mhm.
and very compassionate, and you feel my energy for sure. It's very loving no matter who you are. And I joke because especially when I do talks like this, and every Enneagram 8 in the crowd says this, well, if I'm too soft, then people will take advantage of me. And I get that because that's why I was so hard for
Mm,
so long. And I'm like, listen, for us to make the moves in the world that we are destined to, that we are called to, we
mm,
do have to drop into the softness because that's how we are able to be received by other people. And it was in rehab, honestly, that when I was reading about not just my type, but all the other types, I realized I was raising two types that were not like me.
mm.
And it made perfect sense why I was not making the impact on those beautiful kids that I was raising is because I was speaking to them in a way that they could not hear the language.
Right.
And so what I tell every Enneagram 8 that challenges me, like if I soften up, people will take advantage of me. I'm like, listen, I used to operate 99% of the time in that energy, that intense, and it's a recipe for burnout, not just your health, but relationships,
Mm.
money. It burnt like you will energetically bankrupt yourself if you're in that all the time. So now I've flip-flopped it. I'm 99% of the time in love and compassion, but don't get me wrong. That 1% of fuck you in me, I will kill you. I will crush you. And because I am so much in love and compassion, I have lots of reserve. So my 1% will kill you. So don't get me wrong, all you Enneagram 8s out there, trust me, you don't lose the fuck you in you. So
Yes,
thank you.
that 1%. It's like you said, you just don't mess with Tracy, guys. Okay,
No, I'll kill you,
she'll kill you.
but I'll love you as I do it.
I love it. I love that so much. Well, shifting gears a little bit into Enneagram, and your story's beautiful. Your children are beautiful. You should definitely be so proud of yourself because of what you've been able to create at home. And that's amazing on top of all of your success. And so I want to get in a little bit behind the Enneagram test. And so first and foremost, where can people take the test? Like, what is your number one recommendation? Because there's like 7,000 of them every time you type it in, and you can take them left and right.
Well, I hate this question. And it's the number one question that's asked all the time because people just want to know because you're
Yeah.
hearing how much I've used this framework to change my life and helped thousands of other people change their life with it. So everybody wants like, yeah, give me all the goods. And I just will say this, I like the one at Enneagram Institute. There's a few other ones that I like. I want you to know, even that one, that paid one that I love the most is inaccurate 65 to 70% of the time. There's so many complexities to the Enneagram that just a plug and play questionnaire will never get to the root. A lot of times, if we've experienced any kind of trauma, especially if you got some age on you, even if it's 25, you got a lot of history in 25 years that, there's layers upon layers, like 6 degrees of separation usually to get to the core motive of why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And so just if you're going to take an online assessment, please know 65 to 70% of the time it's inaccurate. And I've done hundreds and hundreds of typing sessions with people with that same test, and the statistics are true. So just use the assessment as a starting point.
Well, shit.
Starting point. And what I will usually tell people is this, and this will help anybody that's just really wanting to know, okay, I've taken a test, it's not resonating, I don't know what to do with this stuff. There's a few different things that I usually will tell people if they want to take this journey on their own. It is a self-discovery process for sure. So first and foremost, you got to be patient. I
Mm.
know you all want the answers right now because that's the way we live in this world. We want like quick fixes. We want quick answers. This is not that. Okay. So if you're going to take this on yourself, just know it's going to take a while, and you have to be radically honest with yourself. And if you have a hard time doing that, that is when you really, really, really should have a guide like me help you through that process. It's just like anything, you know, if you've ever gone to like, Universal Studios, I highly recommend getting the guided tour, because you see all the cool shit. You see the behind the scenes stuff. You see all the ins and outs. You have a better experience. You feel seen, heard, and understood. It's just awesome. Same thing with this. So if you want to really dive into this, hire me for a session to take you through it. That's the best way. But if you're going to tackle this on your own, again, it's going to take a while. What I usually will say is look at the top 4 to 5 scores on the one on the Enneagram Institute. And just because, even if you have that top score with a big gap between the top one and the next one, please don't assume that. Don't assume that.
Yeah. And the reason I'm even asking this, and I took one on truity.com, and I don't know if that's accurate. The reason I'm bringing it up is because I am a 198 was the 3 that I got.
Okay. Well, you're very instinctual then, obviously, because those are all in like the body triad.
Yeah.
They're all motivated by the same thing.
Right. Now, I took one today just, for shits and giggles, because I was like, let me just see if like there's a different number that pops out, because I took it last year and it was a 3.
Yeah.
It was a predominant 3.
This will help. This will really, really help you then. So I love that. And I've had people take that same test that I've told you about. Like they've taken it before, and I still have them take it again with my link.
Yeah.
And almost always they're different scores every time.
That was my question, because
happens all the time.
and that's why I'm asking. I'm like, is there a certain space? So like, obviously I'm going to go into Tracy, guys.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Here's the problem. A lot of us have been personally developing ourselves. And so a few things happen. We're not answering based on the true motive of how we were when we were kids, coming up with our belief system, right? That's when our belief system is born, before the age of 10. That's where our motive is lying, right? And then it takes on all different forms of expression through experiences, through seeking out that this is actually true. Sometimes, especially as women, we compartmentalize our life. If we're wanting to use this for business, we put on our boss babe hat and start answering questions like a boss babe, which is probably why you got a 3, right? Everybody wants to be a 3. So, and if you've had trauma, there's so many coping mechanisms that are clouding your true motive for anything, because you've shut that part down so far to keep you safe. That's what happens. So this is not just a cool party tool or party game. It is way more than that. And so, I mean, I've done lots of therapy. I've worked with lots of people that have done decades of therapy, and one session with me, they're like, holy shit. I'm like, I know, it's amazing, because I know the right things to ask to get to your core motive without a lot of pain. So the thing, when you get the test, look at the top 4 or 5. I've seen sometimes the 5th score being the true type. And then what I will say is there's 3 centers of intelligence. There's the head, the heart, and the body. And so usually, I mean, your first set of scores was the 891. All 3 of those are in the body triad. So we'll start there. In the body triad, those 3 types are motivated by truth and justice.
Yes.
Their underlying emotion is anger. Now, for all 3 of those types, it's a little bit different. So for the 8, which is what I am, we're more explosive with the anger, right? And we will seek truth and justice for the vulnerable, especially for that vulnerable part of us, right? The 9 is seeking truth, justice, and protection for the collective. They're more about the environment, right? They're not as aggressive. In fact, they shut down their anger because they have learned to put their needs aside. They have learned not to need anything because they have to keep the environment protected. So you don't really see their anger except maybe passive aggressively. And that 1 is like, they're the improver. They're the sheriffs, the wardens in town. They have high standards, high integrity. They keep all of us on our toes. They're seeking right or wrong, black and white, good or bad, no gray area. And their anger is more internalized, and that inner critic. They will get a little snippy outwardly, but that's like multiplied by 1,000 internally. So that's like the body center of intelligence. Now the heart center of intelligence. So when you're looking at your top 5 scores, like understanding this is really important, because you'll be able to narrow some down, kick some off the list. So in the heart triad, These three types are motivated by significance,
Mm.
and their underlying emotion is shame. All right. Now, if you have shame, don't assume you're one of these because there's complexities to this, but you'll understand when I kind of quickly go through this. The twos find significance in what they do for others.
Mm.
They're the helpers, right? The threes find significance in what they do or achieve. They believe their worth is tied in what they do, appear, or achieve, where the twos are what they do for others.
Hmm.
The fours find significance internally. They're all about this quest to find their true authentic self. So they always kind of think there's something missing in them, that's something that somebody else already has. And so the shame appears very differently for each of these types. The twos outwardly, like if they aren't appreciated for all their helping, you know, they're like, they think they're a piece of shit sometimes, and that's very outwardly. The threes, you will never see them in shame. They bury it. Like the 9 buries the anger, the 3 buries the shame. They will just go achieve something else to hide it. And the 4s, they internalize it, right? They will carry that woe is me kind of feeling. So that's the heart center of intelligence. The last one is the head. Now we use all 3 of these. We use all of our centers of intelligence, but one dominates.
Yeah.
And then we can use the other ones, you know, secondhand. So the last one is the head triad. These people make decisions, process information, communicate based on thinking, right? And they're all driven by certainty. They need certainty. Their quest in everything they do, what they say, is the need for certainty. And their underlying emotion is fear or anxiety. So the 5s, the investigators, they need to know they're going to be equipped and capable of whatever comes their way. So they're kind of hoarders of information, hoarders of energy. They want to make sure their resources are on reserve. So in case something comes up, they're prepared. So they are the most introverted. Their fear and anxiety is internalized. Like they're the little hermits you don't really see. The 6s, my loyalists, these are the master troubleshooters. They ask lots of questions because they want to be certain that they have all their bases covered. They're like the worst case scenario thinkers. They have a spreadsheet for every possible thing that could possibly go wrong. And their fear and anxiety is outward. Like when you see a 6 spin out, you know it. I am best friends with one. It's crazy town sometimes.
I'm married to one.
Oh, they're awesome. They keep my ass out of trouble, but I also have to have patience knowing they need a lot of clarity and they have to talk it out a lot. Where I'm more of a like go into a burning building, don't give a fuck about it. Like my 6 is like, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? I'm like, geez, okay, yes, thank you. You just saved me. So their fear and anxiety is more outward. And so if you lead a 6, be patient. They're not, and I used to take this as like disrespect. Like, how dare you question me?
Yeah.
As an 8, like, don't you fucking know I have this covered? But knowing that they need certainty, I can slow my roll a little bit and like fill them in. All right. Last is the 7s. They don't want to be trapped by anything. Our good friend Angie is a 7. So they can look flaky. They can look scattered. They can look like they don't give two shits about much of anything because they're moving all over the place because they don't want to ever feel trapped or contained, and especially in painful things. And so their fear and anxiety, just like the 3s and the 9s, shoving down the fear and anxiety, the 7 just bounces onto something else and pivots all over the place. And joy, happy,
Yeah.
and sometimes manic from time to time.
Yeah.
And so if you look at your top 5 scores, if you can kind of resonate with what you're driven by, that will help eliminate. The other thing, and this is the other thing that I tell people when they go this on their own, and this is something that's not talked about a lot. It's kind of like how we deal with things. There's the compliant and dutiful types. There is the aggressive or assertive types, and then there's the withdrawn types. This will help you narrow it down as well. So the 1s, the 2s, and the 6s are the compliant or dutiful types. They're like always watching what other people are doing, right? They're always kind of like they're keeping tabs on everybody. You know, the 1s because of the right or wrong, the 2s because they want to know how they can help, and the 6s because they want to make sure everybody's following the rules so nobody gets blindsided, right? So that might help you narrow it down, right? If you're more of like a rule follower, like you need clear instructions, that might help you narrow this down. Now, the withdrawn types, the ones that need to pull back to process, their first instinct is to pull back, is the 4s, the 5s, and the 9s. Okay. So you notice one is in each of the centers of intelligence as well. So this helps you kind of narrow it down. These 3 types, before they do anything, they pull back. This is probably one of the easiest ways to understand who you are, because if your first instinct is to pull back and withdraw, you might be onto something, right? So the 4s definitely do it, and it feels like all of a sudden very dark. The 5s do it in their hermit mode, and the 9s do it just by kind of being lazy in spirit. They're not lazy people, but they can be like, I don't care, whatever you want, like Eeyore, I kind of call them. And then the assertive types that we see a lot in entrepreneurship, or these are the types that you really think have it easy. I promise you, there's a dark side to all 3 of these types, but they're just like the go-getters. And that is the 3s, the 7s, and the 8s. And we will go in hot and not really think about consequences much sometimes. We don't think things through all the time before we do things, but we also make shit happen. Right. And that's why sometimes people will even manipulate how they answer these scores on the things to try and get the 3s, the 7s, or the 8s, because they think, well, if I'm that, then I'm better. Like, this only works if you're honest with yourself. So that's a way to kind of go with these online assessments on your own, but you have to be radically honest with yourself. You have to. Otherwise, this shit doesn't work. Because if you have the wrong result, none of this freaking matters.
Yeah. No, you just spit so much fire. I got to figure out where, because that was so powerful to really break down the numbers, understand where you're at. I truly feel like we could be a little bit of all of them, just kind of hearing.
Well, the healthier we are, yes, we can embody all of them. I would like to say today that I have a very big piece of each of the 9 types now in me. And that's only through my own self-awareness. And for those of you that want to use this in leadership, I'm just going to say this because I hear this a lot, because you're leading big, large network marketing teams or corporate teams. I mean, my network marketing team is over 100,000 people. I have 7 millionaires in my organization with 5 different Enneagram types within that. But the only reason I was as successful as I am is because I have full self-awareness of who I am and how people receive me first before I start trying to be whatever I need to be for somebody else. You have to know yourself inside and out. And because I did that first for me, then with my kids, then in my businesses, now with my clients and teams and organizations all over the world, it all starts with you. Because if you cannot lead yourself, you will not effectively lead anyone else, whether it's in your home or in your business, period.
Mic drop, guys. All right. I love every single bit. I want to go back a little bit too, because of the fact that, like you said, a lot of corporate, corporate teams will do this, or teams in general, network marketing, just any space that you're working with a group of people. It's very, very healthy to identify their strengths or weaknesses, understand their personalities. Now, going into that realm, because I have done it with our teams, I should say. And that's where, like, you don't want to attach them to a number, but you want to understand them as a number. And because you said something in the beginning that you're like, I had a laundry list of this, and you're telling me to attach myself to a number. And, we can become like it's obsessed with it. If you have a like compulsive, obsessive behavior, and sometimes I can do that. I'll admit it. For example, like now I'm labeled, because when I first did this, I was a 1. And now I'm like, I'm a perfectionist. That just makes so much sense. But at the same time, I'm also like organized, but disorganized. And I do 200 projects at once. That's just how I function. But I had heard you at one point say that 3s are like, and I might be going on a tangent here. 3s are like, when you tell them that they hit a goal, or they make like a rank advancement or something, it's like a drug, and we need to hear it.
You're feeding the beast.
And that's a part of me too. I feel like if I don't have some sort of like something that is a rank advancement or a bonus or something to show for my hard work, I'm almost in a sense like, all right, kind of beating myself up a little bit. But you had said something so powerful that it really hit me. You want to acknowledge the smaller things of how you did that. For example, what did you do for somebody else to help you get that rank? Or what did you do, and acknowledge that part, the compassionate part, and to have you focus on that area and not so maybe egotistical in the area of the 3.
Well, it's not even egotistical so much as a core wound. Usually for a 3 early on, there was the messaging. I mean, a 3 is born an achiever, and then how it gets expressed, a lot of that has to do with the environment they're put in, plus a childhood belief that we attach to it. So, I think an achiever is born kind of that way. And then if you have parents that are grade driven, sports driven, appearance driven, that gets expressed like hyperactively. And then whatever belief, back to my story of hearing the day I was born, the belief that I was ingrained in, I was already an 8, already had 8 tendencies and hyper, like next level 8 with that story. Right.
Mhm.
And so like, this is next level leadership kind of shit to be able to understand. And I piss a lot of 3s off because I won't feed the beast. I
Yeah.
won't, like, I will praise them because they need it, but not for the thing that will keep them in an unhealthy cycle. I
Mhm.
don't want them to continue to move the finish line and not celebrate. I don't want them to continue to move the finish line and leave a path of wreckage and destroy relationships and burn out their bodies and their hearts because they're just all about achieving. But what I will do for a 3 is praise their energy and their heart. And it pisses them off because they want me to feed the cycle, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a good leader, you're not feeding the thing that keeps them stuck in the dark, right? Same
Mhm.
thing with 2s. I won't praise them for being so helpful for other people. I actually praise 2s. My son is a 2. I praise him for going and doing something by himself for himself or speaking up for what he needs because that keeps him in the healthiest form of his Enneagram type. My daughter, she's a 7. I am not going to praise her for her visionary all over the place stuff, even though I love that about her.
Yeah.
I'm not going to praise that, especially if I know she's teetering on not so healthy. But when I see her take time and build a container of quiet and alone time so she can actually operate from a genuine place for that visionary spirit, that's a whole nother thing. So you have to understand the framework and the compass that is the Enneagram. This isn't a label. It's just a compass to let you know where you navigate on this soul path for you. And if you don't understand that and you're just like, I'm an 8, fuck you, this is who I am, like that doesn't help anybody. Like
Right.
I said, it's not a weapon to say, you know what, I'm an 8, fuck you, or you're an 8, you're an asshole, right?
Right.
And it's also not used to be like as a wall, like this is just who I am, deal with it. Don't even bother if that's kind of your operating system because it's pointless. If you're willing to use this entire thing as a compass
Mhm.
to keep you growing all the time and understanding where you go when you're stressed, not to beat yourself up.
Yeah.
But when I notice I'm in my stress number, I can look at it now because I use this as a compass with so much love and compassion. I very rarely will go into like the internal battle on myself
Mhm.
because if you understand that who's driving this whole thing is a beautiful little child that's inside of you, would you ever beat them up emotionally or physically or verbally? No, of course you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And if you want that inner child that's running this whole show to trust and believe that you've got their back, then you better speak kindly to them.
Mhm.
And honestly, mamas and dads out there, if you are a parent, the most important child you're ever going to raise is the one inside of you because that is the one dictating the kind of mom or dad you show up as. It's dictating the kind of leader you are. And the reason I am hands down one of the best mothers I've ever met
Yes.
is because little T comes first.
I love that.
She does every single day. And when I catch myself I could cry just thinking about her because
Mm.
at 4 years old, she was carrying the weight of the world. She was protecting everyone and nobody had her back.
Yeah.
So why would I beat that beautiful thing up again when she goes into an unhealthy pattern? It's her trying to stay safe. So the only way to keep her really safe and nurtured and loved and confident is to sit her on my lap, so to speak, and say, listen, I know you're scared. I know this is what we used to have to do to stay safe, but we don't have to do this anymore. And I got you and I got us, and we're going to do great things with all of this. I'm not one of those that believes everything happens for a reason
Mhm.
because a lot of really horrible things happen to innocent kids and
Yes.
animals. And I'm
Yeah.
not like, I'm not going to say that, but I do believe this that everything that does happen for whatever reason there is, we can use it to do something very beautiful in this world with, whether it's in our own homes, in our businesses, in our communities, whatever.
Yeah.
Or we can remain a victim to it and stay stuck. And you know what? If God calls me home tomorrow, my God, Tiff, honestly, I have used every single hard piece of crap that has ever happened, and all the good stuff too, for something beautiful in this world. So if I'm called tomorrow, I feel really good about it. Not only that, I have broken the cycles, not just with me, but with my legacy that is following me. And that is the legacy I want to leave. They'll get lots of money too, but like it's the integrity and the character and the confidence and self-love and self-honoring that they only have because they've watched me model it and be unwavering in that the last decade. So this is how you use the Enneagram.
I love that. I am crying literally. And I mean, there was so much in that. I was going to go back to the awareness of, understanding what healthy and unhealthy is, and how we can tap into that, and also identifying our stress number. But I want to talk about this little girl because I started crying. Our stories are very similar. And sometimes it's hard to tap into that little girl because it is scary. I was a 4-year-old girl by myself with a single mother. That's my story. My mom did the best that she could. I love her for what she was able to do. I have a lot of compassion for single mothers. I mean, they're always going to have a spot in my heart. And for the longest time, I had anger and resentment around it. And because we never had a stable home, she was trying to find her perfect man. And so for me, it was always moving. It was never stable. And then always, and I'm not shaming my mom by any means, but I know she was doing the best that she could and always looking for a father figure for me. And you just unlocked something that just really hit my heart, because I can feel you, and we relate so much in that area. And I just remember nights alone, I would, I'm a self-soother. So this would never happen. I would never cry. And the only reason I was able to cry is because I went to a personal development course. It was called Choice University, and it's just strictly EQ for weeks. And then we went into a leadership program for 6 months after. So when you talk about this little girl inside of you, and for guys out there as well, there's that little boy inside of you that sometimes we don't know how to access or talk to it. And really, I'm crying because I've done a lot of the work to get to be able to feel this emotion. I had, from the age of 16 up, raised myself, moved out, and figured out the world. I had to teach myself how to become a woman. I, to this day, have never done a drug, and there's things that I had to learn the hard way. So going back to that little girl, I never got to enjoy that youth. And I had to sometimes be my own mother. Mm-hmm. And really identifying how to tap into that little girl. I would really love for you to share with everyone, how we can do that and how we can bring that healthy side of us out as well.
Thank you for being so transparent. I know that takes a lot of courage and bravery, and I feel you, and I'm a self-soother too. Not just with the unhealthy stuff, but even in the most beautiful ways. I've just recently, in the last few years, allowed people to be there for me at 49 years old. So, when I realized that little T was driving all of this, and I realized that, when we say things like, and I want you to know, like when I talk to people, like I have zero judgment towards anyone. I have zero judgment towards my parents. They did do the best they could. They are and were great people. And we have to be careful when we say that, because a lot of times I want you to imagine that 4-year-old version of yourself, especially if you grew up in a hard situation like I did and you did, where there was neglect. It is what it is. Your mom's still a good person, but you were neglected. You were abandoned emotionally from time to time. And it doesn't make mom a bad person, but we have to be careful when we put that narrative on it, because if you put that beautiful 4-year-old next to you and you're saying that shit, you're basically looking at her and saying your feelings about this do not matter. And when I understood that, my parents could have done the best they could, and they did. They are great people, and they didn't give that little girl the container or the space to feel what she needed to feel all her life. And that doesn't make them bad people. But in order for you to really heal, you have to bring that child up on your lap, so to speak, and not, especially the more assertive, aggressive types. Like when I want you to kind of picture me and my 8-ness and my aggressiveness, you know, everything was about protection and like, I'll be damned if you hurt me because I'll kill you. Right. And so how I pictured this was that beautiful little girl of me. And I keep the picture close by. I showed it to you. And until I could really feel her, this is a really great advice, especially if you have a hard time tapping into it. That picture was the lock screen on my phone for 3 years because your phone's always with you and we're never triggered sitting at our desk looking at the computer. It's usually when we're out and about and our phone's always with us. So this same picture was a pattern interrupt and it was like a pause button for me before I would go into my 8 zone and start like blowing shit up. It's like, okay, little T, what are you really scared about? And so when I pictured how I used to operate as like taking that 4-year-old and shoving her behind my back to protect her, although yes, I did protect her temporarily and you know we dodged a bullet, so to speak. But when you do that to anybody, like you just handle shit for them, what that did is basically leaves little T scared all the time of everything because she didn't see what was coming. She doesn't know what to be afraid of, so she's afraid of everything. Right. And so by bringing her into the conversation, so that thing on my phone, when I would feel triggered, even just in my body or emotionally, or then in my mind, you know, I'm a body person first, then my heart, and then my thinking. When I would just tap that lock screen and see that beautiful, beautiful, innocent face, I would just, as though she's standing right next to me, what are you really scared of, little girl? What are you really scared of? I've got us, but tell me what you're afraid of. And the more that you do that, the more that she trusts you and she doesn't have to act out in some of the unhealthier things that we do. And when you do act out, you understand that it's really just a beautiful 4-year-old that's scared out of her mind. And you're going to speak kindness to her and not beat the shit out of her like she was back however many years ago, emotionally, physically, whatever. And so little T and me are BFFs. And very rarely does she get triggered anymore because she knows Mama T's got her back all the freaking time because I've proven it through consistency, through really hard pain. Like the last 2 years of my life have been the most painful in my life. And not for 1 second has she ever felt like Mama T doesn't have her back. And so we don't have to go into the unhealthy parts of our 8 zone.
Yeah.
We can use all the gifts and the superpowers of the 8. And that's how this really begins. But you have to be unconditionally committed to bringing that little child in you into the situation at all times. And if I'm out in public and do feel triggered, a lot of times back home in Chicago, where all this started, right? A lot of times I'll do what I did as a 4-year-old. I will excuse myself, go to the bathroom, sit on the toilet, clothes on all by myself, and rock myself like I have a 4-year-old on my lap. And tell her it's all going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. And you can really heal. You don't need anybody else present to do this work. That's the beautiful thing. Because, you know, my dad died a decade ago. I can't have these conversations. And if I was reliant on him being present to heal, I'm fucked. And my mom is still emotionally neglectful and abandoned. I haven't spoken to her in 3 years. If I needed her to heal, I'm fucked. The beautiful thing is this is all for you to do. The bad thing is it's all for you.
Yeah. I was just going to say it's a blessing and a curse.
You know what? It's all a gift if you choose to look at it that way.
Yes, absolutely. And
So you got to get out of the narrative that they did the best they could. They did. And I have a lot to grieve over innocence lost. Having to figure shit out as a 4-year-old where most 40-year-olds had to figure shit out. Like you have to grieve that stuff and not just in mindset. All you mindset junkies, you can make sense of all this. I made sense of all of this as a 9-year-old. I really did. But if we don't bring the grieving part and feel it with the head part, you're just kicking the can down the street and it's going to keep showing up. Same package, different wrapping paper. I will suggest this. If you haven't watched the movie Inside Out, it's a kid's movie. This one had me in the fetal position crying in a good way. Because I realized, you know, for me, I have no problem going into anger. I feel very comfortable there. It feels very productive, very powerful, all the things. But sadness, I judged as weak. Sadness and pain, I wouldn't go there because it was too unpredictable. I didn't know like that. No, no, no. People could hurt me if I go to sadness. But we have to feel all the feelings. So, understanding things at a mindset level, like if you don't go through the stages of grief for things that should have gone away that they should have, or whatever, like you got to grieve. You got to grieve and feel it in order to get to acceptance, which is where transformation happens. That is
Yeah.
the only place transformation happens.
This is incredible. I think that a lot of the times it shows up as a sign of weakness. And for those Enneagrams out there, like what numbers would you say are in this category when it comes to learning that it's okay to cry? We're actually going to do a podcast like cry like you mean it, because that was a big part of how Tiff Talks came about. Is age 26, I finally was able to cry and let it out and grieve. And so now I'm just a waterworks. I'm just so I can feel everyone's energy. I'm very empathic when it comes to, just feeling and embracing that. And at times it's very overwhelming because it's not how I was raised or brought up, So what kind of advice can you give to people to actually be able, for those of you who are self-soothers or, who think that it's not okay to cry or be vulnerable? And I mean, vulnerability is just, it's gorgeous when you allow it. And is there anything that you can help people with being able to tap into that space?
Yeah. And I'll say this for all the types, because like my sixth friend, she has no problem going to sadness. She feels very comfortable there because she can kind of isolate and be by herself in that. And she likes that. That gives her certainty, right? Where she has a harder time with anger because that's very explosive, unpredictable for the certainty seekers. That might not be a really good thing to be around sometimes, right? So for all types, like if you watch that movie Inside Out, there's going to be one of those emotions that you have a hard time with. And what I will say to you is all of them are required for you to be the healthiest version of yourself, whether it's a mom, a dad, a leader, a man, a woman. The best version of yourself requires all of it. And I still don't love sadness, let me tell you. But I do know this, that the only way to heal and to transform, which if you read my bio at the beginning, I'm obsessed with transformation. So in order to really be obsessed with transformation and not just love it, but walk the freaking talk, that meant Tracy had to be sad. But when you bring that little girl or boy into it and she's free to feel, it doesn't stay that long. I'm not in sadness very long. Sometimes it's longer than I would like it to be, but it's still not very long. Same with the anger. My anger now, seconds, if that, if that. But it's only when you bring that little kid into the picture and give him or her freedom to express themselves. Because the only reason you can't express yourself is because you're putting that little child behind you and saying your voice doesn't matter. How does that feel? Like when I realized that's what I was doing, I said, not on my motherfucking watch am I doing that. So that's why she feels all the things today. So if you're okay telling that beautiful child their feelings don't matter, then continue on. Otherwise, learn how to feel.
Yes, I love that. Oh, so many nuggets. I'm so excited for everyone to hear this episode. I'm like, how fast can we edit this? It's so good. Oh my goodness. I love that. Thank you so much. I really want to go back to the awareness, healthy versus unhealthy. I think that's very important for, businesses, teams, all of that, marketing, really understanding when you start going into that unhealthy side, when can we catch that? When can we, because I know it's like, it's kind of like a trigger response if you think about it, when can we, or what can you say that we can do to be able to be more aware of when we're going to the unhealthy side?
Well, this is why it's so important to have your type right. Because if you're working off a map, a road map, if you have the wrong coordinates, you're screwing yourself, right? The only reason this works the way it works and as well as it works is if you're typed properly. That's why if you want to know for sure, have a guide, period. Now, once you know your type's accurate and you feel really good about it, whether it's by yourself or with somebody else, each number, this is where the self-awareness of yourself, that's why I encourage you not to rush into figuring out your whole team and your family and all that. Like know yourself in and out first. And so when I looked at where I went under stress, so an 8 goes to the unhealthier part of the 5. So all of a sudden I turn into the investigator. And when I see the unhealthy patterns of a 5, when I see those behaviors in myself, that's almost like Siri saying, "Hey lady, you took a wrong turn." You know, when you plug in your GPS coordinates and you're using those apps on your phone to drive, like if you just look at it as like Siri's telling you you've got off course, are you calling her a bitch? No, of course not. You're saying, "Thanks, Siri. I'll take the next turn here." And so that's how I like use the stress and growth numbers, but you have to be typed properly. So when I start to see my unhealthy 5 where I isolate, where I build cases against people so I can kill them basically, or, you know, I start hoarding energy and shutting down. I used to beat myself up for that because I didn't understand. It's so opposite of me. Like, what the hell? This strong girl all of a sudden is in hiding? Really?
Yeah.
Like, I used to judge myself so harshly. So, understanding that's where an 8 goes under stress, I can have compassion because I know it's little T. She's afraid of something. What are you afraid of? What are you trying to build a case against? What reinforcements do you need to feel safe? And when you're looking at it like that, it's way easier to just take the next turn and get back on your soul path. Now, here's the other part is your growth number. And this is the part that, you know, this is why just saying I'm an 8 doesn't serve me. I mean, I'm still, when an 8's the healthiest, it's still great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, think Martin Luther King, right? Healthy 8. But the reason why he was next level great, same with Mother Teresa. Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, 8s. Donald Trump, also an 8. Okay, so you see the dynamics, regardless politically what you think, just you see like the behaviors. But the reason Martin Luther King and Mother Teresa are next level great is because not only were they at the highest level of the 8, they really tapped into their growth number. And that's why I am great. This is why I am the best at what I do, is because not only am I the healthiest 8 I know, but my growth number is the healthy 2, which is the helper. And this is where I have to stretch myself because let me tell you, compassion and empathy does not come natural to me. The more aggressive stuff does. So this is the other beautiful part. If you really want to be the best version of yourself, knowing your growth number when you're typed properly and to keep aiming towards that healthy quality. So the helper is compassion, empathetic, service driven, care deeply, able to read what other people need, not just for our own protection, but because that's what we feel good at doing. And so where a lot of people sell themselves short is where they're like, this doesn't feel in alignment for an 8. I'm like, well, yeah, bitch, because you're going into your growth number. It's not going to feel like comfortable. Like if you've ever done squats for the first time, that does not feel good at first. You can't get up off the toilet the next day, but it hurts so good. So does your growth number. It's not going to feel good at first. Me leaning into compassion and empathy goes against everything my 8 wants to tell me. But to grow into the best version of me, like Mother Teresa and Martin Luther King, I have to lean into compassion and empathy, even when it doesn't feel in alignment. Right?
I love that. So like the biggest nugget that I'm getting from knowing your Enneagram is to not actually focus on the number, focus on what your weakness is and capitalize on that is what I'm hearing you say big time.
Well, your weakness and understand with compassion, like why you go there, not to beat the crap out of yourself, because that doesn't serve, like you're just beating a child up. So stop it.
Right. It's kind of like doing timeline work where you look at your timeline and then you kind of come above it and say, okay, yes, this was awful. And trust me, there's definitely things that are just unacceptable, like abuse, sexual abuse, any of that, you know, there's just no excuse for it. And it's very difficult to find the compassion and whatnot in that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even in situations like that, I've coached a lot of women. Unfortunately, you get to maybe step out of that to heal and look at it and say that person was so disgustingly evil and sick, you know, that I have a lot of compassion because of where that's all they know, you know, or whatever it is. So I think that was really powerful because really understanding how to step out of your timeline, which is like, when was the first time you didn't experience love? You know, mine was 4. It was being left alone. Or, you know, my mom was tired, for example, spanked me before, in the middle of the night, and I threw up, and that wasn't love because I was tossing and turning. I used to sleep with my mom. So those are things that you can step out. I'm compassionate for her for, you know, she didn't know what to do in that moment. She was tired. And I'm sure a lot of you parents can understand that. I mean, it's definitely a parent. Being a parent is a whole nother chapter and job in itself. You know,
Well,
you're
and this is like 20 years ago was my first dive into personal development because my own daughter turned 4. And it
mm,
was very triggering because I had so much rage for my own 4-year-old daughter, who is like a free spirit, 7, beautiful, the most amazing child. And I was filled with rage because little T was inside of me saying, how the hell does this bitch get a life like this? And I had to live the one that I did, quite
yeah,
honestly. And the other thing I want to say about compassion is I am the most compassionate person I know. And for a long time, the reason I had a hard time with it is because that 8 in me felt like if I gave people compassion, that got them off the hook. And I have compassion. I mean, when I said the last 2 years of my life were really hard, I've had some horrible things happen to me. And I have nothing but compassion for every single person involved in that,
mm,
not because I'm letting them off the hook or making excuses for them. Like they'll have their consequences and their stuff. I may never see it, but
yeah,
I look at every single human being, even the most vile, and try to look for the 4-year-old in them and realize that for somebody to do something as horrible as the things that have happened to me too, there has to be a 4-year-old in there that is so damn broken. And it doesn't excuse them. It doesn't let anybody off the hook. Trust me, I'm still an 8 and can kill a motherfucker. But compassion will win every time because the compassion that we're able to freely give other people only helps us.
yeah,
It doesn't let anybody off the hook. And the more that you're able to go into that, the better for you and that little girl or little boy that lives inside of you. And so even when people are salty and assholes, I just try to picture I look at them. I'm like, I wonder what they looked like when they were 4.
yeah,
I really do. And I mean that not in passive aggressive kind of tone, but I really, 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 really do.
yeah.
Because none of us are born evil. We really aren't.
No, no. And that's where you go back, and that's where you can find the compassion in someone that, just like you said, turns into that based off of how they were, raised, or whatever were around, and
They
it
were put
just
in.
becomes reality. I wanted to ask you, and absolutely understand if you don't want to share.
I'll ask anything. I'll answer.
You had mentioned the last 2 years, and I just know this is going to be so empowering. You don't have to say names or anything, but what can you share with all of us that did happen in the last 2 years, and how you conquered and overcame all of these things that have happened to you? Because I know that you could move the masses with this story. I just have a feeling. It's my intuitive side. So I really want to see if there's anything that you can share with us, so that way we can obviously see how the tools go to work.
Smart question. This is why it is so important that you do get healthy so you can trust your intuitive voice and ask a hard question because most people wouldn't have had the balls to ask me
Hmm.
because it's
Yeah.
hard. And the thing is if you know who I am and if you've been following me, I have never dropped off the face of the earth in the last 2 years. I've shown up, not just online as whoever I am, but as a coach, as a mother, as a friend, as a person, as a human. Um, 2 years ago, almost two, it's like 18 months, I would say, has been the hardest. The first thing that happened was my only protector that I had as a child passed away. And he is a member of my family. And when I was sexually assaulted when I was 10, he was the one that found me. And he's always taken care of me and always protected me. And I was very special to him. And it was well known that I was kind of his favorite, and not everybody in my family really liked that. And so once he died, um, a lot of those family members have been absolutely horrible to me, like horrible. And again, I just look at their 4-year-old version. I'm like, of course, but they don't know the 4-year-old that lived through what I did, that this beautiful uncle of mine kept safe. And, we, him leaving, I knew he was going and I was okay with that, but I knew the vultures would come out. Losing him wasn't the hard part. I already knew that that was coming. And I have a beautiful relationship with him in his eternal life. But the vultures were coming and they came in hot. And like my own stepmother has disowned me for whatever reasons that she has. And that's painful. I mean, she was the only connection I had to my dad, who passed away a decade ago. Disowning my children. And being horrible to my children. After that, I was assaulted and had to deal with that and had to do what I would have liked to have done when I was 10 and use my voice to speak up about that. And that was really hard. And to explain that to my children and to show them what courage looks like when I didn't speak up at 10 and 17 when it happened to me. And to navigate that process and relive it over and over and over and over to do the right thing that was the right thing for me. I'm not saying that everybody needs to speak up for whatever reasons I didn't, but for me to be able to do that today and still be a coach and still be a business owner and to still be a mother. After that, a long lost sister comes out of the woodwork that my dad had before I was born. And guess what? The same family that has disowned me has loved on her. And little T was like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I had to live through all the hard parts. You get to show up and experience all the beauty. It's not her fault. It's not her fault at all. And then right after that, one of the most influential women in my life dropped dead like that, no warning. And that was just within a 4-month period in the last 18 months. So I have had to use every tool that I am talking about today. Little T has been on my lap constantly for 18 months, getting so much love, building 3 businesses, 2 in the last, 3 years, bringing new exposure to me is not easy. Little T is like, we like to fly under the radar here. This is really scary, and having to navigate that. And, when you do something outside of your network marketing company, people say shit. That's not fun. After I have, served so many beautifully, that weren't financially linked to me, when I gave my all and traveled over 40 fucking cities in 1 year, you're going to say shit because I'm building a life that I have worked hard for? Really? You think that's fun? That's painful. Or people questioning my motives? Are you kidding me? Like, really painful stuff. And not once have I acted out in aggression, always with love and compassion. Always, through all those fucking things that I just listed off in the last 18 months, I have never not responded with love and compassion. And it doesn't let any of those fuckers off the hook.
No,
it doesn't. They will get what's coming to them if that's God's plan. I'm not God. My job is to be the very best me I can be, and throwing shade and being an asshole won't serve that. So regardless of who has done some really painful things to me in the last 18 months, I am walking my talk, and I have used the framework of the Enneagram to navigate all of it. All of it.
That is powerful, because like you said, even going back to the beginning of Enneagram, you get to be patient through the process. Listening to that recent story, it sounds like you really tapped into that side of really being patient, compassionate still when you had.
Girl, it's why I'm the expert.
Oh my goodness.
Why I'm the expert. I'm telling you.
And my condolences. I am definitely, I'm sure we know he's still with you. We know that, like you said, eternal life. I don't know if you've ever.
Here's the thing. Here's the really cool part of the story. Like, even, him passing away, literally 3 weeks later is when the assault happened. Mm-hmm. And it was almost like when it happened, that 10-year-old part of me was like overseeing. And my uncle and I could never have the conversation about the incident when I was 10. It was never talked about.
Right.
And I didn't know why. Like, there was a block around that. But because he had gone to the other side in his eternal life, when this second thing happened 3 weeks after he passed away, it allowed next level healing. So, I don't know why it happened, obviously, but I do know, again, I've used something so god awful and painful for such big healing, not just for me and little T, but every person I touch, because I do understand how hard this stuff can be. Yeah. But it's through that experience that greater healing came, that without that horrible experience, I don't have this healing that I have today. Yeah. So it's what you choose to do with it. And I've had to grieve all of it. It's not just like, okay, I'm going to use this for the greatest good. And no, I've had to feel all of it. All of it.
That's a lot.
But we're all equipped and capable.
Yeah. And if no one, and this was powerful to me when, this happened to me, I just want to say I'm sorry on the behalf of all of them, because I know they will never say it to you. ever.
No.
So I'm sorry on their behalf. And you obviously have so much to give to the world. And, we're so blessed to have you here on Tiff Talks. And like you said, I think the hardest part in all of this is allowing God to go to work and be patient with his timing, and to know that it's always going to come back. It's always like you get to let go and let God, and really allow that process to work. And is there anything that you want to say on that before I ask you my last few questions?
I will say this, girl, you have a very strong intuition and you need to keep trusting it.
Mm.
Really, really do. The fact that you even just followed up with that, because I'm holding this little note that says divine trust that is on my computer, because it's one thing to trust.
Yeah.
And if you're like me, I trusted until things didn't go my way and then I would take over. Right. And that's kind of how we play God.
Yeah.
Right. Like even you saying sorry for those people, that's beautiful. And I appreciate that. But I believe that even those experiences for those people, they can use it for something beautiful. They don't have to say sorry to me.
Yeah.
They don't. But the real faith comes in divinely trusting. That's why, like, I don't need their sorries. I don't need anybody to apologize for them, because I divinely trust that God will use that for something beautiful, not just through me, but through them, if they choose to honor that. So divinely trusting is a whole different level than just trusting. And when you can fully surrender to the expectation of what things look like and how it goes, that's when the real magic can happen. Now, I am very intuitive too. I very clearly see, like as a 9-year-old, I knew I would be doing this. Not Enneagram, but like this kind of work. And if I had been attached to how that looked, which I kind of was, because I was like causing wreckage everywhere I went. But once I surrendered a decade ago, like God used me, all that stuff. And I have no attachment to how it looks. I have no attachment to how it looks. Definitely wouldn't have picked network marketing. I was like, are you kidding me? That's not what I meant, God, but okay, here it is. Like, seriously, that was the conversation. I was like, really? This? I have no social network. I'm the single mom that went to rehab. Really build a business with me? Okay. 2 years later, I'm a millionaire. Okay. That's divine trust.
Yeah.
Same thing with my children. Divinely trusting that I have made amends, not just through my words, but the way that I live, so that I can break the cycles. I had to divinely trust that just walking my talk, moving forward, even at the ages of 14 and 15, that I didn't do enough damage. And even the damage that I did do, they have used for something beautiful. Because they have chosen that, because they've watched me do it.
Your
So,
children are beautiful, by the way. You can tell.
Yeah.
They are so different. So different. You can just tell from Instagram.
And if you listen to my podcast at all, I interview both of them individually. Like, they could not be more different. And their experience of me is very different.
Yeah, I love that, because it's like going back to God, and I'm grateful we get to have this conversation, because I'm very open about my faith. We are sent, like you said, your children are completely different because they are gifts to you and what we get to learn moving forward. And you look at those little things, because it's super special. And I've seen what you've done, and it's incredible.
Well, like with Casey, she's the 7, and she's this free
Right.
spirit that, like, she taught me how to play and to, like, think anything's possible, where the little girl in me was like, no, nothing's possible unless I'm controlling it. Right. So she gave me that gift. And then, having a very sensitive, empathetic, very strong man that I've raised, like, I can see that a sensitive, strong man does exist. A man that can feel emotions and express emotions and be he is the strongest man I know. And he's 23 freaking years old, and he's my kid. Like that, because I only had very aggressive men in my life.
Yeah.
They were amazing and they were beautiful. They were very protective of me, but they didn't give me a safe place to be emotional. My son has shown me that is strength. That is what strong men can do. And the fact that I'm raising one is pretty awesome.
Really cool.
Yeah.
I'm just
amazing.
Chills. I'm like chills. I love that. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions off topic.
Yay.
I know.
I like these.
Yeah, me too. So we're going to go into, what is Tracy's biggest fear?
Vulnerability, being in love, It's the most vulnerable thing that I can do. And I mean, I didn't date for 7 years after rehab.
Yeah.
That's a huge, it's not because I was busy building an empire. There was a lot of like, I don't want to repeat the past. So this last year, allowing myself to feel that is the scariest freaking thing I've ever done. And I'm doing it, but it's scary every day. Every day I'm like, fuck this. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
But every day I lean into, I deserve to be loved.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
Very vulnerable. Oh my.
power everything.
Mm-hmm.
What, because we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen in, and a lot of the times they don't understand the roller coaster of an entrepreneur. What would you say is the hardest part of entrepreneurship? And then also, what tool can you give everyone in staying the course?
I think that a lot of times entrepreneurship is so glorified. It's like the Bali and butterflies shit. And although there is that element of choice and freedom that can come with resilience and tenacity,
Mm.
you have to be in it for the long haul. It doesn't go to sleep. Um, it isn't for everyone. If you aren't willing to show up every day, even when you've been assaulted and all the things, I
Yeah.
showed up every single day, even through all of that, not because I have this like God complex, but because I am a business owner and people do depend on me. And and the people that look up to me and that I guide, whether it's my children or clients, like they will do what I do, not what I say to do. So even through pain, we can still show up. Doesn't mean I'm showing up like on stages in front of 20,000 people during that. No, but I still show up every day in some form, passionate about what I'm here to do. And if you can't wake up every day, even through the hard things, whether it's in your business or personal life, like then don't do it.
Yeah.
Really, because you're gonna end up like beating yourself up and letting people down. And I know that's probably not the answer you want, but this is not for the faint of heart. It is a roller coaster ride. You've heard the last 10 years of my life, although there's a lot of glory. You don't know the glory without the story behind it. And behind every success, there is a lot of crap that happened that they kept showing up no matter what.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we bypass feelings. I will say that a lot of times entrepreneurship will just power through, and not take time to celebrate, feel the pain. Like again, going back to inside out, you got to feel all the things.
Yeah.
Feel all the things and keep, no matter how much you get your ass kicked, just get back up.
Yes. I love that. And it goes back to before glory, there's going to be all of the guts. So you get to embrace the guts before the glory. And this is where you see your true strength and your never give up mentality. And
Nobody can take that from you.
No, and it's so empowering and I love it. And I think that a lot of people tend to give up before they're even tapping into what they get to experience on the other side.
You know what I did the other day? This is a really good thing. And this is like the Enneagram has helped me do this, like knowing when I'm kind of irritable, like, cause I've let little T play so much, in the last decade that when I'm in work mode, which I love what I do, I could literally do it all day long. But when I'm in work mode, I'm not playing enough. And she's like, hey, lady, yo, we need to play. So I had cleared out my day on Wednesday and I went snowboarding all by myself and I loved it. And I didn't start snowboarding till I was 40 and I'm an athlete, but I could not get the shredding and carving thing because of all sorts of reasons. So for 9 years, I've been terrible, but I show up and I kept getting back on the board. And even though I'd fall and crash and hurt and all the things, I still kept showing up every day. And this last week, I went all by myself. I'm like, I'm going to get it today. And 9 years in the making, I did it. And I was so like, seriously, it was one of the happiest moments of my life because I stuck with something 9 years, no matter how terrible I was. How willing are you to be terrible at something that you're passionate about? And if being an entrepreneur or a business owner or whatever service or product you provide, if you're passionate about it, are you going to let falling down a mountain nine years in a row stop you? Like, no, you gotta like, don't quit before the miracle happens.
Oh my gosh, this is literally like, it's not scary. I'm just like, we're so connected. You and I are so connected. I posted about that, and I think you just recently posted about it. I even said I was gonna play hooky, and I put like Bernie Sanders in the back of like a truck. Yeah, and he was just sitting there with his mittens. But I was gonna go play hooky and go snowboarding because I wanted to get better. So here's what happened. Very long story short, I finally have been really doing diligent of carving, and I was like, great, I got it. And then I went with my husband the following weekend. He thought I graduated. Well, I did graduate. I'm doing incredible now, and I didn't give up. And it, just run after run, just like
hard. It's freaking hard.
So, and I'm like, I got this. And he took me to a new terrain. And then I said, I didn't really like it because it was a little too flat and you would stop, when your board starts to stop, right? And I was like, I was carving, but then when I looked down, it was like falling to my death. I was like, I don't know if I'm, ready to be on corners like this right now. I need to be on an open mountain.
Yeah.
So he goes, well, why don't you come with me on this next one? And I sent the video to everyone. I should still upload it. I'm still kind of embarrassed about it, but it was 1,000 feet straight down in fresh powder. And I'm like, I can do this. I was ready. I had to have a drink because I was terrified at the same time. And I start going down. And I'm like, this is great. First fall, boom, done. Okay. Oh, wait, I can't get up. It's in 10 feet of snow and I'm 5'2". Right. So halfway down, I was skidding and my husband's just laughing at me. And I'm getting more and more of that anger, right? Yeah. And now it's coming out of my eyeballs. I'm crying on a mountain from snowboarding. That's never happened except for breaking my tailbone the first time. But other than that, why am I crying in the middle of a mountain right now? Get up, start going back down. And then it gets to a point where I start to have to pack down the snow.
Right.
It's so deep. And he's just laughing. And I'm like, you're a genius. You're an absolute genius. And he's like, videoing me now, and I'm like, why are you videoing me? This is not with my big helmet, like everything. Right. And I'm packing down the snow, and he's making fun of me. He's like, look at Tiff in the sandbox, and I'm like, and then I'm falling down again, and then I just got so tired, and I'm laying there, and he goes, and as I'm laying there, he goes, oh look, now she's making snow angels, and I'm just getting more and more upset. Then I had to pee on top of it. 30 minutes later after that, and granted, this took an entire hour to get down that mountain, and he didn't help me. I think he helped me once because it was so bad, but he didn't help me get down. He didn't pack me down or anything. And I got down and I'm like, what in the F was that? Like, I just screamed it. I go, and he goes, I'm so proud of you. And I looked at him and I was like, there's no more fun left in me. I can't use my legs anymore. I'm done. This is the second run. That you didn't get up. You didn't give up. You went down the mountain.
Yeah.
And that was a huge lesson for me.
You guys, you just keep showing up. And if it's something like, if you being an entrepreneur is everything you want, then there's no giving up.
Yeah.
No giving up, no matter how much you get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
Your day's going to freaking hurt.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be frustrated and mad and sad and people are going to say shit. And like, really, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
How bad do you want it?
When people say shit, by the way, it drives me. I like to prove a point to a fault, and I get to work on that. But it's almost like, watch me. I'm going to accomplish this, and it fuels my fire. There's nothing better than feeling your own fire with proving yourself that you can do something because you didn't give up.
Yeah, it's like, all right, grab the popcorn. It's gonna be a fun show.
Yep. Last question: what is one thing that nobody knows about you?
I'm a pretty open book. That nobody knows about me.
It could be weird. It could be anything.
Oh, you know what? I have a secret desire. I'm not a good dancer. However, before I die, I will take Irish dancing lessons, like the little cloggers.
Like the flailing of the feet.
I literally, I get goosebumps up and down my body watching them dance. And because of the Irish music, because it's my heritage, and that is something I've always desired to do, and probably should do it before I get too old. Although, I'm still almost 50 going down a mountain on a snowboard. So, but that's on my list. And I think I've only told one or two people, but most people wouldn't know. Because the only way I used to dance before was with some margaritas, and since I retired that jersey, that doesn't happen too much. But that's something I would really love to do.
I love that. You guys, epic episode. I am so excited. I know I will have you back. I'm sure we're going to have lots of questions to ask you. Maybe we can do like a part 2 and 3 later down the road. But Tracy, it was an absolute honor to have you on. And I am just so grateful for your heart, your straightforwardness, your integrity, and your vulnerability.
The honor's all mine. Thank you for having me.
And I want to acknowledge you for being that light for us today. So thank you so much. You guys, this is Tiff Talks, and I cannot wait to see what you guys say about this amazing episode. We'll see you soon.